So we should have this handout, at least half of it complete. This was the long method. We covered this on Friday. We just did a short video doing another practice problem, applying these the long method of factoring using all these steps. And right now in this video, we're going to show you how to do the shortcut. Okay, so let's look at the top right part of our notes. It says shortcut to factoring ax squared plus bx plus c when a equals 1. So it's really just a two-step process, and you're not even going to, you're just going to be able to come up with the answer once you get good at this. Step 1, if you want to follow steps. What times what is the c value that if you combine together is the b value? And let's also jot this down. Let's do this. Let's put tip, make a list. Okay, so only if you're stuck, make a list. Okay. Now, once you find that pair of numbers, what pair of numbers am I talking about? What times what is c that if you combine gives you b? And once you have that pair of numbers, you're going to plug it into your answer format. Okay, so that might sound confusing, but watch this first example. Okay, the teacher does it. Now, what I'm saying is you're going to be able to plug it into this answer format right here, with an x right here and an x right there. Okay, so everybody do that right there. Put the parentheses, put the x. Now, I know that my factored form answer is going to look like this because when I start distributing, what's x times x? X squared. So I could set this up because I know that my first term is x squared. Now later on, when I have a 2 right here, or a 4, or an 8, or a 6, if I have a number that's other than 1, then I can't set this up because x times x is not 7x squared, right? So this shortcut is only going to work when our a value is 1. So we're able to set this up. And now step 2 says, what times what is the c value? Now remember, your a value in this case is 1, your b value is -10, and your c value is +24. So what times what is +24 that if you combine together is -10? And it does say tip, we just wrote this down, make a list. So you could say, how could I get 24? Okay, 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times what? 3 times 8, 4 times 6, okay. So which of those numbers, if I combine them, gives me the b value of -10? Okay, so if we add 1 plus 24, we get 25. 2 plus 12, we get 14. 8 and 3 is not 10, it's 11. 4 and 6, that's 10, right? But notice we have a -10, not a +10. So once again, I have the right number, I just have the wrong sign. So right here, I have the right numbers, I just have the wrong signs. So let me change that to a -4, change that to a -6. And then guess what? Right here, we're done. So why do I say that we're done? Because this is the answer format. All you have to do is take this number, -4, and write it up here as a -4. And you take this number, -6, and you write it up there as a -6. That's it. Ta-da! Finito. I think that means finished in Italian, but I could be wrong. Anyway.
Wait, but are you sure that's right?
Okay, how could you double check if you're right? You could actually distribute and then combine like terms. So if you did go x times x, you get the x squared. X times -6, think about that, that's -6x. -4 times x, that's a -4x. And if you combine the -6x with the -4x, you really do get that middle value, -10x. And the last one, -4 times -6 is +24. So once again, the trick is this. What times what is the last number that if you combine together is the middle number? And once you have that pair of numbers, you just plug them in right there and you're done. You don't have to do that long, nasty process that we did on the previous video. It's like, it's cake. And this is the first one you see. Now, okay, we did have a question that how come we can't use 2 and 12? Like, if I want it to be a -10, why can't I do a -12 and a +2? Well, first of all, what's +2 times -12? That's -24, and we don't want a -24, remember? We want a +24. So that's exactly why we can't use a +2 and a -12. Again, it's always what times what is your c value that if you combine together is your b value. Let's look at a couple more examples so you can see how easy this really is. Right here, we do have a quadratic trinomial. The a value is 1, the b value is 15, the c value is 54. So I know since the a value is 1, I could set this up. I could put an x right here and an x right there. Now, what times what is 54 that if you add together is 15? What was that? 9 times 6. You guys see how we saw that right off the bat? A positive 9 times a positive 6. That gives us 54. And if I add them together, it really does give me 15. I'm done. I didn't have to show any work. I mean, we did that one a couple of seconds, right? As opposed to the other long process, which literally takes like 5 minutes, right? Now, let's say you're not good with multiplication tables. Let's say you don't see, oh, 9 times 6 is 54, and if I add 9 and 6 together, it gives me 15. That's where I say tip, make a list. So if you're totally confused, just make a list, like on the side, go 1 times 54, 2 times 27, 3 times something, 3 times, I believe, 18 if you use a calculator, 4, nope, 5, no, 6 times 9. And you make your list, and then you go through each pair of numbers. Oh, if I add these, it's 55. That didn't work. If I add these, it's 29. That didn't work because that's 15. If I add these, I get 21. That's not 21, that's 15. If I add 6 and 9, that's 15. So I know that this is the correct pair of numbers. And all you do is plug in the 6 right there and the 9 right there. And that's your answer. So look at a couple more. Yeah. So we had a good question. Does it matter if the plus 6 goes first or the plus 9 goes second? You know, order doesn't matter because you really have a binomial times a binomial, and commutative property exists in multiplication. What I mean by that is 2 times 3 is the same thing as 3 times 2. It doesn't matter the order. So you could have put the 6 right here and the 9 over here. But it is important that if the signs are different, you keep those signs there. So if this would have been a minus 9, then you could put the minus 9 over here, as long as you keep the signs with them, okay? Again, let's go to this next one and see how easy this is. So I'm going to go to my answer format. What times what is 5 that if I combine together is negative 6? 5 times 1. But see, 5 times 1 is 5. Negative 5 times negative 1, or negative 1 times negative 5. Okay, so you want both of those numbers to be negative. Negative 1 times negative 5, and we're done. A negative 1 times a negative 5, it really is positive 5. And if I were to add these guys together, it really does give me negative 6. So we're able to factor in a couple of seconds, a couple of moments, without doing that huge, long, horrible process. Let's look at this next one over here. Okay, again, only because the a value is 1 am I able to attempt to do this. And the reason why I say attempt is because when we start thinking, what times what is negative 8 that if I add together is positive or negative 6? What do you guys say? 4 and 2? So if you, well, you got to give me some signs though.
Oh,
Negative 4. Negative 4.
Negative 2.
And okay. Well, negative 4 and positive 2, that'll give us a negative 8. But if you combine them, it doesn't give us negative 6. Okay. So maybe negative 4 times negative 2, huh? Oh, wait a minute. That wouldn't give us a negative 8. So right here, this is prime. Or you could say not factorable. Okay, so we're going to just put a line through that. You cannot factor this one. Once again, not factorable means that you're not able to factor. Not factorable. Sometimes, rarely, but sometimes this does happen. Actually, it happens a lot. But on the worksheets, not that often. Okay. So you're always thinking, what times what is the last number that if you combine together is the middle number? What times what is C that if you combine together is B? And the signs in front of your numbers are very, very important. Okay, so how about you guys try, with the partner, try these 4 right here. Now, how about this? Let's all do this. Let's all go parenthesis, parenthesis, x, x. Right here, parenthesis, parenthesis, x, x. Let's all do this because this is going to be our answer format on all of them. And now you and a partner could start thinking, what times what is my C value that if I combine together is my B value? And then you could just plug in those numbers right here and you're done. Go for it. So this first one, what times what is positive 1 that if you combine together is negative 2? That'll be a negative 1 times a negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. If you add them together, it really does give you that negative 2. So that's your factored form answer, x minus 1 times x minus 1. Let's look at this one. What times what is negative 10 that if you combine together is negative 3? What times what is negative 10?
Negative 5 times 2.
Okay, so negative 5 and positive 2, and we're done. Right? Now, this next one, what times what is positive 12 that if I add together is negative 8? Negative 2 times negative 6, that'll give us a positive 12, and if I add them together, it really does give me a negative 8. So right now, guys, if you're feeling, man, I can't just see the answer negative 2 and negative 6. If you don't see the answer right off the bat, I suggest you make a list of numbers. How could you get positive 12 in a multiplication problem? Okay, you could do 1 times 12. You could do 2 times 6. You could do 3 times 4. And those are all the possible ways of doing it without changing signs. So if you combine 1 and 12, what do you get? You get 13. And obviously the B value is not 13, so that's not an option. When you combine 2 and 6, what's 2 plus 6? 8. You see, this is an 8 right here. That's great, but it's a negative 8. And when you combine 2 and 6, it gives you a positive 8. So you have the right numbers, you just have the wrong signs. So that's why you change it to a negative 2 times a negative 6. And then you simply put the negative 2 right there and the negative 6 right there in your answer format, and you're done. So if you're struggling with doing this in your head, don't do it in your head. Make a list of numbers of the multiples of the C value. And then that way you could look at each of the pairs and see which pair of numbers combines together to give you the B value. How about this next one? Let me make a list right here instead of just... okay, what's the answer, anybody? 7 and 8, right? Because some of us are able to see 56 and immediately think, oh, 7 times 8 is 56. And if I add 7 plus 8, I really do get that 15 in the middle. So my answer is positive 7, positive 8. Now, if you didn't see that, you'd probably want to write a list like 1 times 56, 2 times 28, 3 times something, 4. And you could just make your whole list and then compare your pairs of numbers, and you'll see that 7 and 8 is the only pair of numbers that combines together to give you 15. So that's a correct factored form. So now that you know this stuff, now you know the shortcut, you could practice now on doing the homework on section 8.6. So if we look at 8.6, I did say on Friday that I wanted you to do 1 through 5 using the long method, which seriously, it'll take like 20 minutes to do 5 questions with the long method. But look at the shortcut. Look how easy this is. What times what is 4 that if you combine together is 8? What times what is 12? I'm sorry. Sorry. What times what is 12 that if I add 6 times 2? So positive 6, positive 2. Once again, what times what is a C value that if you combine together is your B value? So let's look at number 2. And always set up your format, parenthesis, 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 n. What times what is 12 that if I add together is 7? 3 and 4. And it's important that we put the plus sign, right? Positive 3, positive 4. So as you can see, you'll get this done, the whole worksheet, in a couple of minutes. So you're probably thinking, why the heck did you show us this long method over here? Okay. Now, and that's what I explained down here on the bottom right side of our notes. You're probably wondering why I would want you to learn the long method instead of the shortcut. The answer is the shortcut only works when your A value is equal to 1. If A doesn't equal 1, then your shortcut doesn't work. So let's look at this example. Your A value is 6, so you cannot do this. Why can't we set that up? Because x times x is not 6x squared. You see, that 6 messes it up. And right here is where you have to use that long method that we learned before, okay, where you follow all those steps. Should I explain it?
Yes.
Okay, the long method, just for kicks here. Step 1 was to multiply a times c. A is 6, c is negative 3. 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. That's our answer for step 1. Step 2 is to think of the multiples of negative 18 that combine together to give you the b value, which in this case is negative 7. So even if you don't know, you could just start writing 1 times negative 18, 2 times negative 9, 3 times negative 6. And if you think about the correct pair of numbers that adds together, that combines together to give you negative 7, that would be 2 and negative 9. Okay? So what do we do with that pair of numbers? Step 3 on the long method, that's where you rewrite your trinomial as a polynomial. Okay, so you're going to take these 3 terms, 1, 2, 3, and you're going to convert it to a 4-term polynomial. So the 6x squared is going to stay the same, but your middle value, the negative 7x, I'm going to rewrite that as these 2 numbers. I'm going to rewrite that as positive 2x minus 9x. And the c value is still going to be negative 3. Now, why would we want to change 1, 2, 3 terms to 1, 2, 3, 4 terms? Because now we could factor by grouping. So let's make some space between the first 2 and the second 2 terms. And now we can look at our first group and say, what could I pull out of there? A 2 and an x. What would be left? 3x plus 1. Okay? And on the second group, what could I pull out? A 3, and even a negative 3 is even better. Because when you pull out a negative 3, you'll get the same exact binomial 3x plus 1. Which means now you could actually pull out that 3x plus 1, 3x plus 1, put it out here in the front. And then what would be left over on the inside? You'd have the 2x and the minus 3 left over on the inside. So this long method that I showed you is not going to help you on this worksheet, but it will help you on future sections and even future math classes. So the factored form is 3x plus 1 and 2x minus 3. So like I said, on our worksheet, we don't have to use this long method. I wanted you to practice it, but it's not really going to come in handy till the next section. Because all of these have the a value of 1. Number 16, make sure you rearrange it first before you start factoring. What else? There's a second half where we're solving equations. So I just want to review how to do that on the next video.